Everyone. Hare Krishna. After a long break, well, not a long break, after a 3 weeks break, I'm glad that we are able to resume our Bhagavad Gita discussion. So those of you who have joined online right now, and those who will be listening to the recording or reading the summary later on, I welcome. I apologize for the delay. For the last 3 weeks, there were a lot of things going on. There was some travel involved as well. And so I couldn't quite get the time needed to resume these conversations. But anyways, I'm glad to be starting again. We'll start with this shorter session today, and then I'll make sure that everyone is doing well, and then we can begin properly from next week onwards. But having said that, we have been on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Looking at the second chapter, we finished verses 29 to 33 from next week. So these here are there open on my screen. So we did 29 to 33 verses last time. And we were about to look into the next verses. Let me just double check and confirm if indeed that was the case. I'm opening up the list of recordings that we have. And yep, 29 to 33 were the last conversations. Anyway, I'll start off with the prayers and then I'll discuss maybe 3 more verses, because after that, the next section begins in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right, so we are on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We finished till verse 33rd. To give a brief summary, the first chapter talked about Arjuna's reasons not to fight. Krishna and Arjuna are stationed at the battlefield. The battle is about to begin, and Arjuna wanted to see who is assembled in the army. While observing the people assembled in the army, Arjuna feels compassion for them. He thinks that they are his relatives, therefore he cannot kill his relatives. He thinks about no enjoyment in the victory, because if he kills his family members, then he thinks that who will he enjoy the kingdom with? What's the point of having a kingdom? He gives his third reason that he feels that he will accumulate sinful reactions, so there's no reason to fight. Killing people can result in a lot of negative karma. And the fourth reason was that it will end up destroying the families. And if the family traditions are destroyed, if men in the family are killed, then women and children are unprotected. As a result of that, a lot of impious people will take advantage of the women and children. And as a result, the traditions and values will be destroyed and they won't be protected, basically. So having all of these 4 reasons, Arjuna says that Krishna, it's better for me not to fight in this warfare. Now, Krishna was in the battlefield. He looks at Arjuna full of compassion, and he tells Arjuna that, hey, Arjuna, here in the first verses of the second chapter, that Arjuna, this is not befitting you at all. You are a great warrior. You are known for your prowess. You should stand up and fight and perform your duty of fighting. But here you are, giving up to this degrading importance. To which Arjuna responds that, how can I kill them? They are worthy of my respect. They're worthy of my worship. Therefore, it's better that they kill me unarmed rather than I kill them. And then Arjuna says that I don't know if I should conquer them or I should be conquered by them. I don't know what to do in this situation. Therefore, Krishna, I've lost all my composure. And you tell me what needs to be done. I'm your disciple. So that was the conversation. He takes away, and we talked about the idea that in such circumstances, in situations when we don't know whether to go right, whether to go left, what is the situation, how do we solve a situation? It's always better to take shelter of a spiritual master, a guru, a teacher who can guide us, a spiritual counselor, who can lead us, who can show us the path, who can tell what's really important in life, and who can give us some wise lessons. And that's exactly what happened. We have previously also compared the Bhagavad Gita to a therapy session, where Arjuna doesn't know what he needs to do. He doesn't know what situation he's facing in life, and Krishna counsels him and guides him. And that's exactly the situation that all of us, I'm sure, face at some point in life, or on a recurring basis, that we really don't know what needs to be done. We feel that this grief is drying up our senses. Whatever happens in life, I don't think we can ever overcome this. So we face these situations, and that's why material problems require spiritual solutions. Because at the end of the day, we are spiritual beings, and that's the first lesson that Krishna imparts to Arjun. That you don't worry about the body. You think that they are the body, you think you are the body, but actually none of you are the body. You are all spirit souls, and as a result, you have a spiritual nature. So that was the lesson that Krishna gives to Arjuna. And we saw that in the first few verses. I mean, the first instruction when Krishna speaks, that the wise don't lament for the living, nor for the living, nor for the dead. You've always existed, Arjuna. You continue to exist, and you are existing, and you will continue to exist. And same goes for all of these people. They have just like the soul goes from the body of a child to a youth to old age. Similarly, the soul goes to another body at the time of death. And you have to learn to tolerate, Arjuna. So first of all, understand you are not the body. Second, learn to tolerate. Why? Because these are like seasons. The appearance of happiness and distress, they come and they go, right? And the seers, the great sages, have concluded that soul never dies. Actually, the soul is indestructible. It is immeasurable. It is eternal. Therefore, Arjuna, don't worry, right? For one who has taken birth, there's no death. For the soul, there's no birth, no death. And even if you think that the soul has taken a body, then you don't worry. Why? Because one who has taken the birth is sure to die, and after that, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, Arjuna, it's like garments, just like we put on new garments every morning and give up the old ones. Similarly, we take up new material bodies and give up the old ones, right? And then we looked at some of the attributes of the soul, that the soul is amazing. Some describe him as amazing, some think of it as amazing. Just think about it, a tiny little particle in the human body that has the power to illuminate and provide consciousness to the entire body. That is pretty amazing. We talked about the idea of consciousness, that material scientists, modern scientists these days, are actively researching what consciousness is. They don't understand consciousness. They're trying to describe it using the hard problem of consciousness, the soft problem of consciousness, trying to put a label around it, trying to understand whether it is localized to the brain, whether it happens in other parts of the body, where it is it external to the body, whether it is internal to the body, whether it is an epiphenomenon of neurological reactions. Nobody knows actually what the soul is, and so it is, or what consciousness is, and it is pretty amazing. So therefore, Krishna is just referring that some people think of it as, and some people don't even after hearing about him, don't understand, because it's non-material in nature, and we are using material techniques to understand something, right? So it's very hard for us to understand. For example, if you want to look for in a radio, we have looked at this example before, that if you want to find out an announcer in the radio, if you open the radio and try to see the announcer, you won't find there, right? The announcer is someplace else, because it's a subtle technology. Similarly, the soul has a subtler nature. Therefore, with our gross technologies, it's very hard for us to identify and discover. Maybe in future there may be a technology possible that they are able to get to the subtler level. For example, previously people did not understand the concept of waves, right? Now we are harnessing the power of waves using our microwave technology and communications and telecommunications and all of that. But that's the point, that if somebody who doesn't understand, he would think that this is incredible, this is amazing. How is communication happening through air, right? Literally through air we are able to communicate. So similarly, the soul is pretty amazing actually, if you think about how it imparts consciousness into the entire body. So therefore, Krishna says that, Arjuna, nobody can slay the soul, so do not grieve for any living being, right? And then he says that as your duty, that you are a Kshatriya, you are a warrior. Therefore, what is the best engagement for you? It's to fight on religious principles. That's what you were born for. That's what you studied. You went to school under your great teacher Dronacharya to learn this, and here you have an opportunity to fight for what is right, and you want to run away, right? Kshatriyas who get such opportunities, who get some fighting opportunities unsought, it opens for them the doors for heavenly planets. it opens your doors to achieve something great, or even go up to the heavens and the heavenly planetary systems. So this is your opportunity, Arjuna. But however, if you don't do it, then you will start incurring sins. Why? Because you're neglecting your duty and you're losing your reputation as a fighter. So when Arjuna was thinking in the first chapter that I'm incurring sin by killing, no, actually he's incurring sin by not performing his duty, right? It is his duty to perform. So for example, a soldier on a battlefield, if he says that I do not want to kill, killing is bad, murder has criminal penalty, then that criminal penalty does not apply on a battlefield, because here he's authorized by the government to fight on their behalf. But if the same soldier tries to commit a murder in the city, then the criminal charges are applied to him. So the difference being that it was in that circumstances, killing was necessary, killing was important. They tried all the mechanisms that were possible to avoid war. Duryodhana and his party did not listen to any of it. Krishna even said that, just give them 5 villages, so that they are 5 rulers, they're 5 kings. They are born as warriors and kshatriyas, and therefore they deserve to rule. So you need to give them. But Duryodhana said that I wouldn't even give them the amount of land that could be covered by a tip of a needle. So therefore, war was inevitable, and therefore, Arjuna, it's your duty to fight. So we looked at till verse 33. Today we look from 34 to 38. 34 to 38, because after 34 to 37, because after 38 a new section of the second chapter begins, which is called as the Buddhi Yoga, or understanding detached work without reactions. So far, in general, to give a structure of the second chapter, the first 10 verses of the second chapter are the indecisions of are basically talking about the indecision of Arjuna, where he doesn't know what needs to be done in life. So he is confused. He doesn't know whether he should fight or he should get killed. From verse 11 to verse number 30 is Jnana Yoga, right? Krishna is explaining through the means of analytical study. He's giving an analysis of the body, of soul, of matter, and trying to explain the difference between the two. From verse 31 to 37 is out of which the 3 verses that we looked last time. This is basically performing your prescribed duty, the importance of duty. 31 to 37. And 38 to 53 onwards is the idea of doing your work, but being detached from it. So there's no reactions to it. So that goes from 38 to 53. Very interesting verses from the second chapter. And it talks a lot about mind and understanding the mind, and either being controlled by the mind or bringing our mind under our control. And from verse 54 onwards to verse 72, it talks about the qualities of a liberated being, the qualities of somebody who has transcended this matter. And what does he act like? What does he do? Arjuna even asks the question, for example, that what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? That means that person is not defined by material nature. How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Right? So anyway, we are still looking at the importance of duty, and we'll start with verse number 34. I'll start with the verse, the translation, and just some brief comment on that. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayasyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya chakriter maranadatiricyate. Akirtim, infamy, cha, also, api, over and above, bhutani, all people, kathayashyanti, will speak, te, of you, avyayam, forever, sambhavitasya, for a respectable man, cha, also, akirti, ill fame, maranat, then death, atirichyate, becomes more. So what is Krishna saying? People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So again, what Krishna is trying to do here is trying to exhort and encourage Arjun, that Arjun, you are a warrior, and you are saying you don't want to fight for religious principles. Come on, people will speak of your infamy, that look, was such a great warrior and ran like a coward. It's a way that Krishna is trying to motivate Arjun to understand, to recognize his powers as a warrior, right? So that's why sometimes it can seem like, right, that Krishna is speaking in these terms, but actually the point is that he is trying to tell Arjuna that as a warrior, it's your duty. So don't run away from your duty. If you run away, It's like a doctor, if he says that I cannot perform this surgery because it's too risky, if it's my family member, he's running away. But as a doctor, it's his duty to perform. So similarly, Arjuna, you are talking about righteous principles. You're not just fighting for the sake of a kingdom. There's more than a kingdom that's at stake here. And Krishna, Arjuna, that's Arjuna. One of the reasons Arjuna doesn't want to fight is he says that I don't want the kingdom. And as we see, as we proceed through the Bhagavad Gita, we'll see that actually it's not just about the kingdom. The kingdom is just a prize at the end. But the entire idea is to fight for what is right, fight for religious principles, and to kill people, annihilate people who are impious and who do not want to lead a courteous and righteous life. And that's why it's establishment of the religious principles, the establishments of the principles that will lead to a proper society, establishment of a proper order in the society. And Krishna does explain in the second chapter in further verses, that's one of the reasons why Krishna and other of his incarnations descend is to establish what is right. Whenever things decline, at that time Krishna appears and establishes something so that things can get right back on track through him, or sometimes through his disciples, or sometimes through his representatives, or through his incarnations. Anyway, so here Prabhupada explains that Krishna gives his final judgment that Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield, people will call you coward and give you bad names and ill fame. And ill fame for a warrior is worse than death, because a warrior is willing to give up his life and kill or get killed. And to live under infamy, it's going to be worse for you. Therefore, fight, do not withdraw. Verse number 35. Bhayadranam uparatam mamashante tvam maharathaha yesham chatam bahumato bhutva yashassi laghavam. Bhayat, out of fear, ranat, from the battlefield, uparatam, ceased, mamashante, they will consider, tvam, you, maharataha, the great generals, yesham, for whom, cha, also, tvam, you, bahumataha, in great estimation, bhutva, having been, yashasyasi, you will go, laghavam, decreased in value. Translation: the great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. And another reason Krishna is explaining that these great generals, they think that you are the best warrior. Even the best warrior on this battlefield knows how great you are, Arjuna. And again, there's a lot of history that precedes before this verse, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, again, is part of the Mahabharata. And there are a lot of stories of Arjuna exhibiting great valor and great strength and great agility to be one of the best, or the best warrior on the planet at that point in time. So Arjuna, for you to run away, they will think that, oh, look at this fool, he's running away out of fear. Therefore, you should do your duty. So he's trying to give Arjuna some of the reasons, they are not very powerful reasons, but again, it's Krishna's way of telling Arjuna that, understand, Arjuna, it's your position to fight, it's your position to do your duty. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of it. Do your duty and understand that this akirti, the ability of infamy, it's gonna bite you, right? So their high estimation for your personality will go to hell. Therefore, Arjuna, perform your duty. Verse number 36. Avajyavadamschabahun vadishyanti tavahita nindanantastavasam samarthyam tato dukkha taram nukim. Avachya, unkind, vadan, fabricated words, cha, also, bahun, many. Vadishyanti will say, tava, you are ahitaha, enemies, nindantaha, while vilifying. Tava, you are samarthayam, ability, tatah, than that. Dukkataram, more painful, nu, of course, came. What is there? Translation: your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Right? So Arjuna, here are your enemies, and they will use such words such as Karna. You have had this enmity with Karna, with Duryodhana. You know how cruel they are. With Shakuni, imagine they tried to disrobe your wife, they tried to insult your family, they tried to kill you in multiple places, right? It's not the first time where Duryodhana and his inimical friends have tried hurting the Pandavas. They tried to poison their food very early on in the Mahabharata. They also tried to send them to a forest and put fire to their cabin. Then they have sent various people, people to hunt and kill them while they were in their while they were hiding away in the forests. So, and then they defeated you at the gambling game. They tricked you all into playing the gambling match, and then they disrobed your wife. So these Kauravas, these people, Duryodhana and his friends and his brothers, they're not the best of the people. You have to perform your duty, and if you run away, then they will laugh at you, and they will scorn your ability. And Arjuna, what could be more painful for you, to understand that they are wrong, that they have committed wrong to you, and yet you are running away from this cowardice and from this compassion, which is not appropriate at all in this situation, right? And that's what Prabhupada also explained, that Krishna was astonished at the beginning for Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, right? This is not the place for compassion. Compassion deserves its place, when killing is happening for sense gratification, for our own needs and importance. But here it's needed to establish the right principles. And here you are practicing compassion, right? Therefore, Arjuna, you should not use this compassion and you should do your duty. Verse number 37. Hato va prapashyasi swargam jitva va bhokshyase mahim tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya kritanishchaya. Hataha, being killed, va, either, prapashyasi, you gain, swargam, the heavenly kingdom, jitva, by conquering, va, or bhokshyase, you enjoy, mahim, the world, tasmad, therefore, uttishta, get up, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, yuddhaya, to fight, krit, determined, nishchayaha, in certainty. So Krishna is saying that, O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So Arjuna, understand, there's no loss for you in this endeavor. Why? Because either you get killed and you go to the heavenly planets and you die performing your duty, and then rest of it will be taken care by providence, or you will get conquered and you will achieve the earthly kingdom and you can establish a righteous rule. Therefore, you have to get up with determination and fight. Again, Krishna later on reveals that, Arjuna, don't worry, they are all killed by me, actually, by my agency, right? Krishna, being the supreme, being God, knows what's going to happen in future, and he knows that they are going to be killed by his agency. Why? Because they are fighting for injustice. They're fighting for something wrong. They're fighting for evil and nefarious reasons. So Krishna knows that they're going to be defeated. But here he's trying to motivate Arjuna again to establish. That's why sometimes Bhagavad Gita, we have to look at the context. The context here is the immediate running away from the duty of Arjuna, and the broader perspective that your duty is important in whatever circumstances and situation you are in. Duty takes precedence and you have to perform your duty. And that's the point that is being explained and established here. So either way, Arjuna, now you should understand that you have to perform your duty and you have to move forward with it. While we are at it, actually, I can look at a few more verses because, this was kind of a shorter section with very easy to understand verses. So this ends the section which talks about sakam karma, that is performing your duty. Now Krishna talks about buddhi yoga, or work without reactions, detached work. So what does that mean? So that's the second section that begins right here from verse 38. So let's see. So let's do till 38, 39 and 40. And then there will be a subsection within this broader section. So here, kind of a gist of this section from 38 to 53 is that Arjuna wanted to avoid war, right? Because sinful reactions will come. So Krishna said that actually sinful reactions don't come by killing in these circumstances. Sinful reactions will come by avoiding your duty. So here, Krishna will explain that how can you always avoid reactions, how you can work without reactions. And that's literally the meaning of the word yoga. Yoga literally means to work without reactions, the art of doing all work, right? Sometimes many people, when you ask them what is Bhagavad Gita, they talk about karma yoga, right? Do your duty. This is actually the section what they refer to, but that's not it. There's more in the Bhagavad Gita. But again, this becomes a very important section of this conversation. Anyway, so Krishna then explained jnana in the first part, Then he explained work, karma, and now he's explaining work with detachment or work with knowledge, right? And this is also called as nishkama karma and or karma yoga, basically doing actions in such a way that they do not accrue reactions to you. So we start with verse 38. Sukha dukha same kritva labha labhau jaya jayau tato yuddhaya yuju yasva naivam papam avapashyasi. Sukha, happiness, dukha, and distress. Same, in equanimity. Kritva, doing so. Labha alabhau, both profit and loss. Jayau ajayau, both victory and defeat. Tatah, thereafter. Yudhaya, for the sake of fighting, yujyasva, engage. Na, never. Evam, in this way. Papam, sinful reaction. Avapashyasi, you will gain. So what is he saying? He's saying that do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by doing so, you shall never incur sin. So that's the art of doing all work, actually. That do the work just for the sake of it, just because it needs to be performed, just because you happen to be there, without thinking about whether you'll win it or you lose it, or whether you'll get happy or whether you'll get sad, right? Or whether you'll gain something or whether you'll lose something. Don't worry about it. Just do it for the sake of it. And that's the art of performing all work, actually. That once you do something with that mindset, then you don't incur sins. You don't incur any reactions, basically. What to speak of sins? Both positive, negative, both reactions go away. So he tells Arjuna that, just because do the fighting, because Krishna desires the battle, right? The battle they tried to avoid it, but now it cannot be avoided. So it has to be performed. And just do as that. Just be an instrument in the will of providence. The providence has already decided to go a certain way, and you can be an instrument. And Krishna reiterates and repeats this instruction later on in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But what Krishna is saying is that, Arjuna, just do it for the sake of it, for the sake of it. Don't think about what's going to happen to you or to anyone else, right? Just do your duty without thinking of the reactions. So everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna as transcendental. So whatever is done with the instructions of divinity, with the instructions of the Supreme, then there is no reactions. The reactions only arise when we put our consideration in front of everything. Otherwise, the will of providence prevails and things accordingly moves. But the experience of loss and gain and positivity and negativity is because of our own perception. Why? Because we bring a material perception to an overall underlying spiritual mechanism. This world, we are spiritual beings, and this world is being governed by its inner spiritual energy. But what happens is that because we start identifying with matter, then we bring this material perspective. The moment we bring material perspective, matter is made of duality. As a result, dual nature of the world comes to picture. So sometimes things are good, sometimes things are bad, but we are transcendental to that. Why? Because we are not matter. So therefore, we are not affected by this duality. But just because we are in this situation, we get affected by this duality. And as a result, we think of the world in terms of what is in it for me, what do I gain, what do I lose, etc. So the point here is that, Arjuna, do your duty for the sake of it. Why? Because understand that you are a transcendental being. Nothing happens to the body. Sorry, nothing happens to the spirit. The body will die eventually anyway. And you have to fight for the principles. And once you do your duty just for the sake of it, you are already in a transcendental position. And that's the point of the Bhagavad Gita, that even for our lives, the instruction for us, the extraction of this instruction for our own life is that we have to do our duty for the sake of performing our duty and in a transcendental consciousness, understanding that the matter does not affect the spirit. Matter goes on and matter will continue to go on. But as spiritual beings, we are always transcendental to this particular nature, this particular plane. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, there's another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is another major text that we have previously referenced also, that somebody who has surrendered unto the instructions of the Supreme, they are not affected. They are not debtor. They do not own debt. Otherwise, we all have debts, right? There are debts. Now, what kind of debt do we talk about? Krishna explains it further later on, but the debt means we are given food, right? We don't create our food. The earth gives us food. All the plants, fruits, vegetables, that are grains, they all come from the earth. We get free sunlight, free oxygen, right? We get all of these things for free, actually, that nobody charges for, right? We get it. We get even our body, actually. So we own a lot of debt, and this debt has to be repaid. That's why a lot of the work has been done. We owe a lot to Mother Nature actually. But by acting in a transcendental consciousness, by going with along with the nature of the system and the will of providence, the debt goes away. Therefore, Arjuna, understand when you talk about getting sinful reactions, understand that you are just doing your duty. And in performance of your duty, you don't get any reactions, right? For example, again, the example of a soldier fighting war, when he kills people in the battlefield, if he's doing what he's told to do by his higher ups, he's just performing his duty, he doesn't get any negative reactions from the government, right? In fact, he's even awarded. The point being that you have to, Arjuna, perform your duty just for the sake of performing it. And that's how the world would function, and the smooth functioning of this war and everything would take place. And Krishna further explains this. What does he say later on? We'll look at two more verses, 39 and 40. Eshate bihita sankhye buddhir yoge tva imam shrinu buddhaya yukto yaya patha karma bandham parahasyasi. Esha, all this they unto you. Abhihita described Sankhya in analytical study, Buddhi, intelligence, Yoga, in work without fruitive result too. But Imam, this Shrinu, just here, Buddhya by intelligence, Yuktaha, dovetailed. Yaya, by which Partha, O son of Pritha, Karma Bandham, bondage of reaction, Prahashyasi, you can be released from. So what is Krishna saying? Thus far, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study, right? As we talk, the analysis of matter and spirit. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. So you are doing the work, but there's no fruitive results. There's no bearing of the fruit of your action. O son of Pratha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works, right? So each work results in some kind of a fruit. It's either a positive fruit or a negative fruit, right? And the living entity gets that fruit just by the dint of performing the action and the consciousness in which that action is performed. So if you can truly understand that you are a divine being, you are a spirit soul, you are transcendental to this world and through the actions of this world, then you don't bear the fruit. But if you act with material consciousness, with material understanding, then you bear the fruit. And this is also known as Buddhi Yoga or Nishkama Karma Yoga. That means action without any fruits or without any fruitive desires, right? There's a long purport here in which Srila Prabhupada has explained the importance of Sankhya philosophy, that the philosophy that was given up in the beginning is the analytical study, which is the Sankhya philosophy, which talks about you're not the body, you're eternal beings. And as eternal beings, you have eternal nature, right? So this is the description of Sankhya philosophy. There was also Sankhya philosophy. There was another sage named Kapil. There were two sage Kapila actually that come in the Vedic terminology, Vedic literature. One of them gives the Bhagavad Sankhya, or the philosophy of Sankhya, in connection with the divinity. There was another sage who's referred to here as the atheist Kapila, who was an impersonator. He later impersonated and he completely misrepresented the teachings. So here the philosophy is not of the imposters. It's the original Sankhya philosophy that comes from the original text of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So sometimes it happens that some people will come and they misrepresent the teachings and misrepresent the philosophy. So that's why this long purport here is describing actually what's the right way to understand and what is true Sankhya philosophy. And here Buddhi Yoga is also mentioned, right? Buddhi means intelligence. So when you act with intelligence, you do yoga with intelligence. That means that you do your actions without getting bound up by them. You do it just for the sake of performance because you are an intelligent being. You're using your intelligence and you're not using your mind. Because we understand from the Bhagavad Gita later on also that the body is made up of 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and ether, which is basically the principle of solidity, because we have solids in the body, the principles of liquidity, we have liquids in the body, we have principles of gas, we have principle of space, and we have principles of sorry, I forgot, and heat, heat. Yeah, so we have these 5 elements. It's a different way of looking at the world. For example, the modern science looks at elements, right? Looks at the periodic table of elements and describes in terms of that. But even more fundamental than that is these 5 principles, actually, according to the Vedic understanding. And beyond these 5 principles is the principle of mind. Beyond the principle of mind is the principle of intelligence. When we act on the principle of mind, then what happens? We accrue reactions. But when we act in using our intelligence, then we don't accrue our reactions. So that's what Krishna is trying to explain. And that's literally what Buddhi Yoga means, is the use of intelligence. And intelligence in understanding what's our transcendental position and acting on behalf and understanding of that transcendental position as part and parcel of the divinity, as part and parcel of our conscious source, and acting with understanding that we have a relationship with our conscious source, but we are still separated here in matter, and as a result we have to perform our duty, and we still have to see the broader picture. And that's how we also can lead our life. That's one of the lessons, one of the most important lessons of Bhagavad Gita, is to understand what is that. And that's essentially what self-realization is. We talked about it very early on when we even started these conversations, that a core important teaching of Bhagavad Gita is self-realization, understanding who we are. And an important attribute of that is to see our connection. Basically, if you just think about the idea of who we are, right? If somebody asks that, who are you? Then we give a name, and then we try to explain, right? Oh, we are connected to them, we belong to this place, these are our parents. Our existence does not mean anything in vacuum. It is always in relation to something. So our temporary existence is basically in relation to temporary things. But if we truly want to explain our true nature, then we have to give our answer in terms of something that is permanent in nature. And what is permanent is the existence of our divine conscious source and our relationship with that conscious source. And once we understand that relationship and understand who we are, only then can we truly explain our nature and truly understand self-realization. So when we act with that understanding of self-realization, only then we can truly act without performing any work. And that's exactly what Krishna is trying to say here, that as long as you remain in this temporary understanding, you are going to get bound up by reactions. But the moment you transcend that and you use your intelligence to understand who you are, and just you do your duty for the sake of it, without realizing, without even thinking that you have a connection to it, just doing it just because you are in such a situation and providence has brought you in such a situation, you just perform your duty, you will transcend this. And that's the point, Arjuna, that you need to understand here. So that's the point that Krishna is explaining here, that this is what Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga means. We'll look at one last verse, which is kind of the end of this introduction to this section from verse 38 to 53. And this is a very famous verse. It's very often quoted out of Bhagavad Gita. Neha bhikrama-nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam api yasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Na, there's not. Iha, in this yoga. Abhikrama, in endeavoring. Nashaha, loss. Asti, there is. Pratyavayaha, diminution. Na, never. Vidyate, there is. Sualpam, a little. Api, although. Asya, of this. Dharmasya, occupation. Trayate, releases. Mahata, from very great. Bhayat, danger. So what is Krishna saying? That in this endeavor, right, performing your duty without realizing, thinking of good or bad or reactions, just doing it for the sake of it. When you do that, what happens? There is no loss or diminution. There is no loss, Arjuna. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So this idea of acting while understanding our true nature, even if we have not realized it, but just intellectually understanding and performing our duty with this understanding, there is no loss. It keeps on increasing. It increases our conviction and brings us close to our conscious source. And at the same time, it can protect us from the most dangerous type of fear. All the fears that arise in the world, they arise. Why? Because we identify with something that we are not. That's the reason why we are afraid in this world. Why? Because we identify with something that we are not, and we fear that it's going to get taken away from us. And that's the reason why we get afraid. But when we are truly established in the self, when we are truly established in our divine position, in understanding what our relationship is with the Supreme and who we are, then nothing can affect us, Arjun. And that's what you should understand. And it can protect you from the most dangerous type of fear. So it's a very important verse, actually, that you, Arjun, you should understand. And here he gives further example of a very famous personality called Ajamil from the Srimad Bhagavatam, who was performing his spiritual activities and then lost track and got engaged in highly material activities and forgot his constitutional position. But at the end of his life, he still remembered something about it. And as a result, all the previous hard work that he did, it continues from there on. There's also another perspective to that, is that sometimes if we do some spiritual activity in this life and we are unable to finish it, then from the next life we just start from there. We don't have to restart from zero. But on a material plane, if I do a PhD in this lifetime, then my next life I don't get to start from PhD and start to do postdoc. No, I really have to go back to nursery and kindergarten and all the classes and grades, and then undergrad and grad and then PhD. So the point here is that spiritual activities, they don't go, right? There's no loss. And a little advancement that you make, it carries on. And that's the verse, that is the reference that is being given here, that there is no loss in this endeavor, Arjuna. Therefore, go, perform, act your duty, do your duty, and there is no loss and diminution for you. And it will protect you from the fear that you are facing right now, that what's going to happen to my family, their family, kingdom killing them. It will all protect you from that. Why? Because you're acting in a transcendental consciousness. So to conclude, to summarize, we looked at actually we looked at 7 verses, almost 6 to 7 verses today. We started with understanding of what we studied up until now. We looked at the Sankhya understanding of matter and spirit that Krishna explains the analytical study, and after analytical study, Krishna gives from verse 31 to 37 the importance of performing your duty. So we looked at some of the verses that if you don't do your duty, then they will speak of your infamy, and infamy is problematic, Arjuna. You know, they will describe you with unkind words, and it will be very painful to you. Therefore, just fight, do your duty for the sake of fighting, right? And then from verse 38 onwards, we started looking at the Buddhi Yoga side of things, the principle of action without reactions, that do your duty for the sake of it. And literally the first verse explains it very clearly. Don't think about happiness or distress, loss, gain, victory or defeat, just do your duty. And when you do this, what's going to happen? You will free yourself, and there is no loss or diminution here. And a little advancement can save you from the greatest type of danger. Verse 41 to 46 are very important verses of the Bhagavad Gita. They talk about the importance of good intelligence, high intelligence. What does truly intelligence mean? Vivasayatmika buddhir. So these are very important verses from till verse 46. And from 47 onwards, it explains how do we perform and what are the benefits. And that's the division of this. And then we look at the qualities of a liberated soul, the qualities of somebody who has attained transcendental consciousness. So again, Bhagavad Gita is a very interesting, very important, and very necessary text for us to truly understand our position in this world which is trying to confuse us and give us temporary reactions and temporary realities. It's imperative for us to understand, and Bhagavad Gita offers a way. So I hope everybody benefits from these discussions, readings, conversations that we have. I look forward to seeing you all next week when we continue our discussion. I hope everyone is keeping well. Thank you. Have a great evening. Hare Krishna.